YouTube or on Twitch, and you can catch this there. But for those of you on TikTok, I'll try and keep you included since you're on the phone here off to my left. It's going to be an interesting night. I'm really excited for it. We've got two books. First up is And in the Beginning by Manna Clarke. I'm going to be sharing them as I go. But then second, we've got Redemption by Cherie, which is book 3 in the Decra 926 series. It'll be very interesting. Both books have a lot of unique words. Redemption by Cherie has a bunch of words that she made up for the book. So this will be pretty interesting to try and get through. I got tongue-tied a little bit just going through my practice runs. Okay, so for anybody who's new here, these live author readings are intended to promote indie authors. You know, they send me an excerpt. I read what excerpt they sent me, usually between 1,500 and 2,500 words. Tonight, both authors that I'm reading have sent me the full 2,500, so it's going to be a little bit longer of a reading. Hey, Chris, how you doing? Yeah, like I said, at first, we've got Manna Clarke's And in the Beginning, which I'm really excited for. And then we have the third book in the Decra 926 series by Cherie called Redemption. Both of them are up on the webpage. The webpage is live, so for those of you watching on Twitch and YouTube, here's the webpage. Again, as usual, click on the title, and that'll take you to where the book is for sale. If it is for sale, Manna Clarke's book is not out just yet. Or you can click on the author name, and that'll take you to whatever site they gave me, whether it's a link tree or a website, and you can support the author. Please, by all means, go to the author website, go to the author link tree, find them on social media, follow them, like their stuff, share their posts. Anything you can do that's free and helps support the artist, I absolutely encourage it. And for those of you watching on TikTok, feel free to share the live. And let's get some more people in here. Also, for those of you on TikTok, I'm still not able to do live on my Atlas Creed, so we're going to be here on the Indie Author Connect. All right. I'm going to drop this down, and on the live, I'm going to go ahead and get Manna's banner up. I've already got it up here. Let me go ahead and flip this screen around so you can actually see it, get my mug out of the way. All right. What's up, Angelique? And I think, yep, Manna's in here. Hello, Manna. I'm going to try and keep track of both chats that I've got going on. So if I miss anything, I apologize. Bear with me as I'm trying to navigate this. A lot of screens going on here. All right. So the first up tonight is Manna Clarke's And in the Beginning. And the excerpt she sent me has a very intriguing title. It's just The End of Everything. Bear with me. Like I said, both of these books have more uncommon words, so if I mispronounce something, I apologize. Manna, feel free to correct me in the comments. I'll check it after I'm done streaming. And I hope you guys enjoy. It was chaos. Utter chaos. When he had taken out the leader of the infiltration team, Nassaru had exposed himself as a Sumerian sympathizer and condemned himself to a slow, painful death. But when he had used his powers and called upon Anki to strike down the remaining Anunnaki and save the girl, Nassaru exposed himself as something else entirely. Beat. There was no going back. There never was. With his eyes locked steadily on the gray light, Nassaru ran a hand through his unruly dark hair. It wasn't fair, but in this moment, fairness didn't matter, and all he could do was tilt his head back to accept what was then, what was now, and what had yet to be. And with that acceptance, his mind finally began to settle, and that bolstered Nassaru just enough to face Luma properly. But when he turned, his eyes flicked to the tunnels and back again in alarm. She hadn't moved an inch. She just stood there, her mouth moving with hushed words that he couldn't quite hear, and he didn't need the lights to burn brighter to recognize the unhinged terror in her muted green eyes. Beat. This time the ceiling cracked. Nasseru and Luma could now clearly hear the loud booming sound that echoed up through the floor. It was hard to miss something as deafening as a mountain falling to pieces from inside out. The entire compound rattled like a child's toy, shaking from its deepest foundations to the highest tower climbing several hundred meters above where they now stood. Screams rang into the night, joining the chaos, and with each passing second, more Sumerians dashed through the room that Luma and Nasseru stood immobilized in. Oddly, not one of them seemed to notice either the ascended master or the frightened initiate. It was better that way. With his hands raised in front of him, Nasseru crept closer to Luma, much like he would approach a wild animal. Slowly, he reached for her, but it was no use. For every step forward he took, she took one backwards, her lips still moving with words he couldn't hear. He didn't blame her, really, not after what she had just seen, and what she was undoubtedly thinking about him. Traitor was about the nicest word Nasseru himself could find, and he could bet the rarest gold on his entire existence that whatever Luma thought was worse. Luma. Nasseru needed her to understand what had happened, but there was no time to explain. As much as he'd hoped this path would not be put in front of him, that Luma would flee down the tunnel to safety and he could report to Lumasi that she was safe, and still unable to help, Nasseru also knew that because she had chosen to stay and face him, he had one more thing to do before he could move on and seek out his absolution. "What have you done to our people? You betrayed us." Finally, Luma found her words again, and her entire body shook in anger and a fair amount of terror when she realized that whatever she thought she knew, it was nowhere near all of it. "No." His response was quick and betrayed the hidden pain he carried in his soul. "Everything I have done has been orders. You need to underbeat. Stars. There isn't time. I need you to listen." "What is that?" "The planet is breaking up. Sumer is gone, Luma. Lost. Eridu is elsewhere for you now. Thousands of years of civilization destroyed in a single night by one race obsessively determined on taking what they couldn't have for themselves. And Nasseru now knew that even with this easy victory, Alalu and his people wouldn't stop with the destruction of Sumer. No. They already had their sights set elsewhere. And it was there that the last stand of the Sumerians would take place. But first, they needed time. "You did this! You murdered our people!" There was no polite way to say it. And even if there was, after everything that had happened, Luma wasn't feeling very calm. In fact, she was the direct opposite as she stalked towards him with one palm held firmly against her bleeding neck. The words hit him like a stone anvil. Nasseru clenched his jaw and held his silence, absorbing the truth of her words as the punishment they were intended to be. He reversed his grip on the dagger in his hand and offered it back to Luma. Even if she chose to drive it through his heart and twist the blade until he begged for mercy, the worst she could do was make him bleed. Immortality had its perks. The offered dagger slowed her down. Nasseru saw skepticism register in her eyes as she took it from him, examined it, and sheathed it in her boot, all without letting him out of her sight. He didn't have to read her mind to know that she considered attacking him at least once. Beat. The chamber shook so violently that Luma lost her balance and lurched towards Nasseru, not resisting when he swept in and halted her fall. She looked up at him, her dusty green eyes confused and angry in silent accusation, and in that moment he could have sworn she could see everything he had done. And then, from far off down the tunnels, Nasseru felt the last of the masters leave with those that had made it safely to the extraction zone, and he nodded. So be it. Just the two of them remained, and he could get Luma out on his own. Those were his orders. He had to get her out, no matter the cost. It had been foreseen. Why? This time her voice was softer, and though Luma would never admit it, she was grateful that he'd caught her fall. There isn't time. I need to get you out of here. I'm not going anywhere with you until you tell me, traitor. Against her will, her mind had already decided she was going to let him continue to save her. But Luma pushed herself away from the man who had helped the Anunnaki destroy her people anyway. She tried to stalk away, but the chamber was shaking so violently that she didn't even take 2 steps before his arm was under hers again, holding her upright. Luma, you have no choice anymore. You are needed. I don't care. As stubborn as your brother. Nasuru took hold of her arms and wrenched her back to him, holding her close. He had risked too much for it to all fail now because one stubborn girl refused to take the final steps to answer to her fate. But at least he's where he's supposed to be. Imagine how much you could have helped if you just... Anger stirred deep inside Nasuru, and he shook her by the arm to try and make her see reason. That swept a little of the wind out of Luma's sails, and she twisted in his hold to stare at him, her own anger shining like a beacon in her eyes. Using her brother's name like that, as if he knew him? How dare he? Surely he'd just heard of him that day when he had been with Gula, surely. But right now, in this moment, that day seemed like an eon ago, and it came to Luma's attention that whoever this ascended man was, he still hadn't told her his name. Nobody had ever mentioned his name, or the fact that he had visited her old compound. Odd. You! Nasuru watched her face contort with confusion and fear as she made another futile effort to wrench herself free from his grasp again. He hadn't been wrong when he told Gula she was feisty, but her feisty attitude wasn't what he needed right now. Yes, I know Lumasi. He is Isimud. He paused, but not long enough for Luma to react. We both are. Isimud? Whatever snippy retort Luma had froze forever on her lips as the word sank in. The Isimud were the elite hand of Enki, the supreme ruler of her people. If he could be called that. Some legends stated that Enki was an ascended Sumerian that had refused to leave, instead choosing to remain with his people to ensure they were guided correctly. Another joked that, and he was overly fond of the cheese that could only be made from the goats in the Blue Highlands beyond Ur-Nuru. Luma didn't know which part was true. Her experience with their leader was limited to watching him from afar during ceremony. But she had heard all of the childhood stories about the Isimud and the things they allegedly did to Sumer and her people. Most of those she had dismissed as flights of fancy, tales told to children to enhance their sense of adventure during playtime, and to make them behave. Only now, this man in front of her it was true. And her own brother had joined their ranks. Worse, he hadn't told her about it. To Luma, that rated higher on the scale than whatever this man had done. The hand of Enki, yes. Nasuru's iron-tight grip on Luma softened just enough to let her blood flow freely again, and he ran both hands along her arms to ease the shock that had replaced the anger in her eyes. If it were even possible. It wasn't every day she would learn her brother was a spy from a man she thought was a traitor and would probably hate by the time this mission was done. Everything we do is for our people, including letting Sumer fall to the Anunnaki. Luma whispered again, her mind delving into the memory of a vision she had been blessed with a few rotations past. Image after image flashed through her mind on repeat, but this time one stood out from the rest. And this time, Luma could see his face. She looked up at him, her eyes widening as she realized that maybe he was right. Ina Luiti Sinapana, the man with two faces. Most people just call me Nasaru. His tone was dry, but a hint of humor flashed briefly through the melancholy in his brown eyes. Before she could stop herself, one side of her mouth curled, but Luma quickly shoved any sympathy she felt for him away. Her anger at what he'd done, her confusion about the entire situation, and the guilt that echoed for what he'd said about her were too vast for her to process anything else. I have seen you before. Luma reached up and tapped the side of her head, her wide green eyes even more perplexed. In here. Even before that day with Gula. Only now you have a face. Or two. Why do you think everyone has been telling you it was time? If he wanted to, Nasaru could have seen what Luma was thinking from the moment he had first recognized her in the chamber. He could have seen everything, but it was the most impolite thing an ascended Sumerian could do. Now, however, he reached out to make that connection, curious about what she was seeing and how it involved him. It had been so long since a proper seer had been born among them that he brushed his manners aside and went searching for what only Luma could see. His hands, still holding her arms, tightened again as he saw himself shifting from Anunnaki to Sumerian and back again, from Sumerian to something else again entirely. He knew his fate, and had since the day he took his first step as an Isimud. But to see it in someone else's mind? The reality of it sped toward him like the comet he had helped Alalu sling toward the unfortunate planet, and Nasaru knew there was no escaping it, and there never had been. Beat. Everything shook constantly. In reality, a few moments had passed, but to the pair standing alone in the chamber with the pedestal and the device that had effectively ended the Sumerian race, time still appeared to creep at a quarter of its speed. The entrance to the tunnels collapsed, huge sections of it falling in a cascading ripple of tile and stone. A dust cloud billowed out of the rubble, whipping around the pair in the chamber unnoticed as their odd conversation continued. Luma would have fallen again if not for the grip on her arms, and she watched in complete fascination as Nasaru's eyes lost focus while he concentrated on something else, his mind clearly going somewhere she could not follow. But as she observed, the light, feathery touch of another consciousness connected with hers, probing into her thoughts, and she swallowed hard as yet another vision rose in her mind. An embrace, much like he held her in now, only much, much more intimate. Stupid, stupid brain. Unbidden, her cheeks flushed with a heat Luma didn't recognize, at least not at first. She swallowed again, wishing for that particular image to be anywhere but in her mind, not while she was connected to a master, and not when it involved his hands decorating her naked body, and his mouth putting that same flush on her cheeks again. The spark Neperdu had alighted could never compete with the furnace Nasaru had created in her stomach. For his part, Nasaru's hadn't fully detached from Luma's mind when he caught what she saw next, and his face paled in shock, eyes widening as he recognized what he had been yearning for all these long centuries. No, please. Not that. He wrenched his mind away and refocused on her again, absolutely crestfallen about what he now had to do. Before he had seen her mind, Nasaru had been hesitant, but now? Now the Ascended One was devastated, and the aching in his chest had nothing to do with the battle they had just fought. It's her. Tilting his head back to stare at the ruined ceiling in dismay, Nasaru swore, closed his eyes, and surrendered his life to the will of the universe, as he always had, The Ascended One needed to move quickly. If he hesitated for even half a second, Nasseru knew that one glance would be enough for him to throw everything to the wind. And if he did that, it would all be over. I'm so sorry, Luma. One day, I hope you'll understand. Faster than her eyes or mind could follow, Nasseru reached inside himself for his doorway to unkey. It funneled into him like a shining celestial conduit that then flooded through to the stunned woman he still held upright. She cried out, stiffening in his grip as it infused her body, and he dropped his head to reveal brilliant amber eyes that glowed with the raw power of the universe. Beat. The chamber shook in its death throes, and without hesitation, Nasseru wrenched more of it into himself and wrapped it around both of them like a protective cloak. He was just in time. Not even a second later, Sumer exploded in a multicolored flash and set off a cascade that would also destroy both of its moons, with a light display so intense that it could still be seen millions of years later. And that is the end of the excerpt from And in the Beginning by Manna Clarke. And my God, that was phenomenal. I know I read that the first time. I know I stumbled over the words, and I apologize about that. But honestly, the writing, phenomenal. The tension you build in that scene was really well done. And I'm excited for you to finish this book. Manna, I know you're in the chat. Do you have a release date set already, or is that still kind of up in the air? Thank you. I appreciate it. March 28th. All right. March 28th. You guys heard it here. I cannot wait. So if you enjoyed that as much as I did, by all means, please, the people in TikTok, go follow Manna. She's right there. If not, for the people watching on YouTube, right up top there is her TikTok handle, or go to the website, click on her author name, and that'll take you to everywhere that you can follow her on social media. And by all means, I highly encourage it. Oh, Nander, how you sign up? If you go to atlascreedauthor.com, and right at the top, I've got author live reading. And under there is everything that you would need to send me. I'm currently getting it trying to get it migrated over to Calendly invite, so that way you can populate your own calendar. I've got a few more authors that I need to schedule, and so if you are one of those authors that are watching this and you have scheduled, I have seen it. I just haven't put it down on the calendar yet and gotten back to you, so I apologize about that. I build the website at the time that I schedule, so it takes me a little bit more time. That way it's all prepped and ready to go. And just in case you're wondering, I have updated the website so that this is already live. As soon as I'm done reading here, it will be live to view on YouTube. You can use it for all your promotional purposes. And it takes usually about 24 hours for YouTube to kind of release the live video so that I can download it and make the snippets. But those will eventually end up under each author section, so that you can go view it at any time and share just that reading expert for anybody to hear. But yeah, seriously, Manna, and again, this cover right here is beautiful. I don't know who did it, but it looks fantastic. And the writing was phenomenal. Like, really. I had such a fun time reading that. All right, but I am going to switch this here. If I can figure out how. Give me a second. I'm not used to doing this on here. Okay, there we go. I'm going to switch this over to the next book that we're going to be reading, which is Redemption by Rachel Cherie. And let me do that here as well. All right. So for anybody that was here for the last couple weeks, you might remember Redemption by Rachel Cherie is book 3 in the Decra 926 series. We read the first two, which was Expedition and The Cure. The Cure was last week, and Expedition was just before Christmas. And they're phenomenal books. I definitely am going to stumble over this one because she has a bunch of words that she created just for the story. And I stumbled over them last week. I know I'm going to stumble over them again this week. So Bear with me. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. And yeah, absolutely, David. I agree. Manna's writing is phenomenal. And again, in my little midsection prompt, for anybody that for any author, indie author that wants to support, as Nander asked, just go to my website, atlascreedauthor.com, and at the top of the page you'll see author live reading. Click on that. It's got everything you need to send me. Just send it to me in an email. I'll get to it. I'll get you on the schedule. Currently I'm booked out, I think, till like mid-March. There is a calendar on there. I think you can click through and see when I'm booked out till. And I've got a few more authors that are going, so it'll probably take me to the end of March. So I'll start for April. But yeah, by all means, I am happy to read your work. Just send me an excerpt and I'll promote you on live author reading. And with no further ado, then we'll get into this next one. Let me flip my camera around, get my mug out of the way. And same thing over here, drop the webcam. Bear with me as I'm jumping back and forth between the OBS YouTube video and TikTok over on my phone. TikTok took away my live studio, and I'm kind of struggling to deal with that now. So just bear with me while I jump through those two things. Let me get some water here. And we'll jump into this next reading. And again, I do it all the time. I'm going to do it again. I apologize up front if I mispronounce these words. There are quite a few of them in here. I wish you guys could see what I'm reading. maybe that would kind of help give me some sympathy points. But the writing is phenomenal, just like Manna's was. So I'm excited to get into this. So again, this is an excerpt from Redemption. This one has no title, but this is book 3 in the Decra 926 series. The navigation cell door opened, and Danishku walked in with Rick at his heels. "I'm just saying," the Texan said. "Dogs are the best animals in the entire universe." "And I do not understand how you can form such an absolute opinion with so little data. You have never met the vast majority of animals in the universe." "You've never met a dog." Danishku sent Rick a glare, then turned to the projection screen as they came to a stop. "Ayek, display available imagery on the projection panel. Do we have any identification?" "My scans show the vessel to be an 82% match to other Opta-Ure crafts we have encountered. No armament data retrievable," the adaptive interface said, appearing beside the screen. "Imagery rendering now." An ovoid ship with wide, curved wings and a cluster of turbines at the back generated on the projection panel. "What is that thing?" Elise asked as she and Hasman entered the navigation cell, followed by Temvu. "Ayek says it's an Opta-Ure ship," Danishku said. He looked over his shoulder, then his eyebrows rose. Did you come straight from the fitness cell?" "What gave it away?" Elise laughed, then glanced down at her snug, spandex-like tank top and pants. "It's not like we can practice Kalpeut by osmosis, Denny." "She speaks the truth," agreed Hasman. "Indeed." Temvu crossed his arms. Clearing his throat, the head officer nodded and turned back to the screen. "Of course. Ayek, hail them." Attempting hails. "Oh, Elise." Elise spun around at the sound of her name to find Hadrol, and Mavner striding in. Tajim a few steps behind. "What?" "You're looking good," Hadrol continued. "Really good." Color flared hot in her cheeks as the she-human giggled and tried to suppress the flattered smile. "Thanks." Danishku turned back to face them with a disgruntled scowl. However, before he could protest their conversation, Ayek announced, "Incoming reply to hails, audio and visual." "Accept transmission. Everyone else, step out of view," ordered the head officer. The thin figures of Noholek and Nabaru materialized on the projection panel. The siblings traded sly glances, then refocused on Danishku. "Salutations, The head officer crossed his arms and squinted at the pair. Salutations, Trenglu, Nohalek returned. Both of the Abd-Ur's eyes flashed white. A pair of Abd-Urs. Why am I not surprised? Tell me, why have you joined our hyper-interstellar travel stream? Nabaru sashayed closer to the camera. Bedroom walls do not have the best stories. The crew out of view on Riav traded confused glances. Scoffing, Nohalek pulled Nabaru back to his side. What we want, Topasean, is for you to surrender yourself to us. Why would I do that? He looked past the Abd-Urs. A pair of Kukaran guards stood stiffly in the background, but no one else was visible. I do not even know who you are. I am Lord Nohalek, and this is my sister, Lady Nabaru. We will make our request politely once more, then we will escalate to more aggressive tactics. Aggressive tactics? Oh, that doesn't sound very diplomatic. In fact, it sounds rather hostile. I do not believe my tactical officer would appreciate that. I certainly would not, Rick said. He sauntered forward to stand beside Dinishku. Your defiance of the Abd-Ur Imperium will be your downfall, Trenglu. We'll take our chances, Nolly. Y'all should just go back to whatever dark, abysmal corner of the universe y'all come from. My guess? A radiated cesspool somewhere. Dinishku stared over at Rick. Feeling brazen, this Rin? Shrugging, Rick glanced between the Abd-Urs and the Topasean. Maybe a little bit. He pinched his right thumb and forefinger close together. If you will not comply willingly, then we will force you to submit. Nohalek narrowed his eyes while he straightened to make himself as tall as possible. If everything was pretty, it would make the dolly's head spin. Nabaru giggled and wound some glossy black hair around her finger. They might spin off. Then you'd have to put them on again. She ran her long fingers around her slender throat and deliberately blinked her long lashes in slow, enticing intervals. Hadrol grunted in disapproval as the rest of the crew shifted on their feet and traded glances. These dollies won't get their heads reattached, sister. Nohalek wrapped his arm around Nabaru's, drawing her back to himself. Are they bad dollies? She asked, looking over at him. He bumped her nose with his. Very bad dollies. Will you dress them for me? With pleasure. She smiled over at Dinishku and Rick, and the screen went black. Communication terminated, Ayak announced. What was that? Elise shouted at the projection panel. Disturbing as Krasnu. With a grimace, Rick glanced at Hadrol. He said they were siblings, didn't he? They are the twins, Nohalek and Nabaru. Hadrol stepped forward, rubbing the back of his neck. They are currently some of the most prominent twins in the Imperium. Their notoriety, as you might guess, is largely due to their two most defining attributes. One being that she's a few bananas short of a fruit basket. Rick gestured wildly with his hands. If that is a way of saying she is Plux, then I must agree with you, Dinishku said. But what did it mean? Tajim asked from the back of the group. Wait. Elise looked back at Hadrol. What's the second thing they're known for? Sir, we are being targeted, announced Ayak. Hadrol pointed at the adaptive interface. Being impulsive and unpredictable. The Abd-Ur vessel is arming weapons. Dinishku remained stationary while the crew scattered to the consoles. Rick and Temvu moved to the tactical console, and Tajim manned the operations console. Hasman stayed at the main console while Elise, Mavner, and Hadrol stepped back. As everyone skidded to a stop at their station, Dinishku called out commands. Clarke and Ioadne activate the deflector shield. Nazul, monitor systems. Maximize defenses. Freyor, monitor communications. I want to know if they make any attempt to transmit anything. Deflector shields activated, Rick said, patting the console. Very good. Ayak, render the trajectory map on the holographic display. Danishku moved forward toward the holographic console. Rendering now. The map materialized, showing Ryav with the Abd-Ure ship not far behind. Should we accelerate? No. It will simply match us for speed. Instead, I want Ryav to drop out of our current travel stream. Turn 32% to starboard and initiate a new travel stream. Once established, accelerate to Hejek 14. Do so on my mark. Understood, sir. Ryav is ready. Brace yourselves, everyone, the head officer said. Even with the dampeners, this could be turbulent. Ayak, notify Uzvaksin and the councilman. Yes, sir. Notifying Consultant Uzvaksin and Councilman Previt... sorry about that. Previt Mujaj. Weapons fire! Rick and Temvu were hunched over the tactical console. Looks like laser fire. Deflector shield taking minimal damage. They are likely testing our ship's abilities. Dinishku glanced at Tajim. Systems within acceptable parameters? Yes, sir. Tajim nodded, but her eyes never left the console. Ayak. 3, 2, 1. Mark. The internal lights flashed, then everyone lurched forward as Ryav abruptly dropped from the hyper-interstellar stream. She spun around so fast that the inertial dampeners did little to stabilize the crew. Once aligned with her new course destination, the Barthene immediately prepared to reinitialize a hyper-interstellar travel stream. The Abd-Ure vessel is intercepting our location, Ayak reported. The red dot representative of the Abd-Ure ship blinked on the holographic map, quickly closing on Ryav's location. So, the head officer turned from the map to Tajim. How long until we can initialize hyper-interstellar travel? 40 lensens, she said, as she typed into the console, trying to redistribute power to reduce charge time. Secondary vessel detected, Ayak said. A smaller red dot appeared beside the Abd-Ure craft. Elise stepped toward the holographic display, Hadrol beside her. Where did that come from? From the Abd-Ure vessel, Ayak answered. Scans indicate it matches the larger craft's engine signature by 97%. It appears to be an assault flyer. Both ships are targeting us. Clarke, Dinishku called. Implement deflector shield grid alignment randomization. You got it, boss. Implementing now. Temvu, take the shield directional fortification control. Temvu began to type alongside Rick. As the randomization came online, a barrage of lasers and torpedoes slammed into the shield. The Barthen shuddered, but remained stable. With an unhappy sigh, the head officer paced in front of his chair. Return fire with lasers and electromagnetic pulses at their engines. Returning fire, Temvu replied. On the console, his fingers pounded out sequences. Clarke, status of our shield. Dinishku stood behind the head officer chair watching Rick and Temvu work. We've taken some damage. We're down to 88%. The alignment randomization is slowing degradation. Lasers and electromagnetic pulses do not seem to be having much effect on either enemy shield, Tajim announced. I did not expect them to. The Abd-Ure ship's fluctuating grid oscillations have proven a consistent complication. 20 lensens to initialization of hyper-interstellar travel, Tajim added, still typing. I cannot reallocate any additional power without routing from the shield and the electromagnetic pulse. Sir, Ayak spoke up. There is another ship on our radar. Eda Muvek, Dinishku grumbled between his teeth. Can you identify it? Scans indicate it is the vessel associated with Sijner Ket. You've got to be joking, Elise said. She stared at the projection panel, her eyes wide as the battered, angular ship appeared. Incoming transmission, audio and visual, the adaptive interface reported. Accept transmission, Dinishku said. He centered himself in front of the screen. Instantly, Sijner Ket's face replaced his ship, His gray eyes were cold, and his mouth formed a straight, hard line. Salutations, Barth and crew. Oh, now it's a party, ain't it? Rick shouted from the tactical console. The Abdur vessel is attempting to contact Ket, Hasmond said, tapping on the main console. Crack. Who's that bullzoo? Ket asked. He frowned and clacked at his dashboard. Nohalek's assault flyer shifted to fly between Ket's craft and Riav. The bounty hunter glared at Dinishku. Is this a trick? A trick? The head officer scoffed and held his hands up, palms open. What kind of trick? We are under fire. The navigation cell opened, and both Zertijur and Kajnar rushed into the room. What the crack is going on? The dumb Haon shouted. When she saw the bounty hunter on the screen, she stopped. Ugh! A gun with his ugly face? Where have you two been? Elise demanded. I was praying, Kojnar answered. He strode past Elise to stand beside Hasmond, who was still bent over the main navigation console. Elise turned her attention to Zertijur. The Domhian offered up a guilty smile. I wasn't praying. Tell me, Zuhuri, who would you rather have hunting you? Me or this other Freljik? Ket's expression remained solemn and agitated. You know, it is a difficult choice. Dinishku looked again to Tajim. 4 Lensons. 3, 2, 1. Lifting her eyes, the head engineer nodded affirmation. Ket, I think I will let the two of you figure it out. Dinishku grinned and let his hands drop. Ayak, initiate hyperinterstellar travel now. Nohalek fired at the Barthan again, but before more than a couple shots could hit, Riav vanished in a flash of light. Ket moved to chase after Riav, but before he could enter an interstellar travel stream, Nohalek's assault flyer's torpedoes struck his shields, just as a residual electromagnetic wave from Riav rolled over him. The shield instantly deteriorated, and within moments, the bounty hunter's ship exploded. As Ket's vessel burst apart, debris flew in all directions. Nohalek, who was positioned mere lengths away, swerved to dodge the burning chunks that soared past him. One of the turbines, however, ricocheted off a larger exterior plate that had just been part of a wing. It spun right through Nohalek's high-velocity deflector shield and smashed into the core of the small craft. Aboard the larger Abdur vessel, Nabaru stared in stupefied horror at the cascade of explosions. Her eyes and veins flashed white, and then a tear rolled down her cheek. Bad dollies, she muttered. Bad dollies dressed with no place to play. Bad dollies don't deserve pretty stars. Bad dollies take Nohalek away. Bad dollies will suffer their scars. Are you certain? Dinishku asked. He leaned on the head officer chair, gripping the back. Yes, sir, Ayak replied. The vessel of Sijner Ket abruptly terminated directly after the assault pod discharged weapons. What is the status of the Abdur crafts? The assault pod's engine signature also abruptly terminated shortly after the destruction of Sijner Ket's vessel. Ayak gestured at the holographic display, which updated as she spoke. The larger Abdur craft is still operational. Dinishku groaned and ran his fingers through his chaotic brown hair. Hell ne Firel. What a Virat disaster. Not only did we manage to eliminate the bounty hunter hired by the peace service, but we also destroyed another Abdur. The head officer turned to the crew, still lingering at their stations. Clarke, Nuzul, Freyr. Status reports. And that is the end of the excerpt, Redemption by Rachel Cherie. And I want to apologize, because I know I stumbled over all of that. But don't let my bad reading deter you. The story was phenomenal. I really liked the engaging battle that they had going on, and I wish that I could have built a little bit more character into Nohalek and his sister, because they really seem like interesting characters. Kind of have that I don't know, the brother and sister from Hellboy and the Golden Army. They give me that kind of a vibe, which I think is awesome. The character types definitely seem to match that, and I'm excited to get in the book just to kind of read more about those two characters. Let me go ahead and get my camera back up here. Get the promo back up. But yeah, again, both of these excerpts, Redemption and Manna's writing and In the Beginning, were phenomenal. I really enjoyed reading both of these. And I'm really excited for the book. So March 28th, for those of you that were listening, March 28th for Manna's. Let me go ahead and get that one back up here on TikTok. So Manna's book and In the Beginning comes out March 28th. The website is up, so if you'd like to go find an excerpt, once YouTube lets it available, I'll download it. I'll cut the excerpt of just her reading, and I'll put it on there. And I'll do the same for Redemption with Rachel Cherie. But like I said, YouTube takes about 24 hours. And again, any author that would like their reading done, visit atlascreedauthor.com, go find the live author reading section, and send me all the information that I need. And I'm more than happy to set up a live author reading for you to promote your book. It'll stay on the website. You'll get the YouTube video on there. I'll pass on links to where they can purchase the book, where they can follow you, whether it's a website or a link tree or just, say, a TikTok or a Facebook. But yeah, more than happy to do it. And I've been enjoying every one of these week's readings. They're phenomenal. And I'm really happy to be part of a community with such talented authors. But as always, I'm going to cut this here. For those of you who aren't aware, Between the Pages comes on at 8 o'clock every evening. They do live author interviews. So if you would like to promote your book even further, reach out to Sean Amick and go ahead and schedule a live author interview and promote your work even further. But until next week, I really appreciate you guys for stopping by. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.